I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place.
What's going on, YouTube world? This is Sean, and I just got through watching this video of a Muslim that was responding to a video made by Naomi94 regarding Muhammad and his relations with a 6-year-old child. Aisha, I guess her name was. And this guy set this video out to defend the actions of Muhammad. And personally, I think it was sad, and it's sad to see religious people be so willing for the sake of their religion to overlook questionable and sometimes objectionable things that are found in their holy text, whether it be Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, but in this case Islam. To see this man who seems to be a bright individual and smart and very capable, to sit down and seriously want to defend Muhammad being a 50-something-year-old man, having a marriage and consummating it with a 6-year-old girl, consummating the marriage later with a 9-year-old girl, I guess, as it being okay and needing to be understood by us people today, and not as something to knock down Muhammad and the religion of Islam. And and it's sad to me that instead of being honest and confessing that yes, these things are kind of questionable, yes, these things probably do need to be looked over again and again, and yes, they may be objectionable, instead religious people seem, in this case with this whole marriage thing, to want to immediately defend it and excuse it, or just look it over altogether, just gloss right over it. And I've seen that time and time again in Christianity and Judaism, but this is one situation where with Islam. And it's just sad that they rather defend and look over it than to actually think, you know what, these things are kind of questionable. These things are some things we need to really think about and wonder why, or are they seen as okay. Now, this individual, sort of Allah, he gets into initially wanting to go through the definition of pedophilia altogether with Naomi. He wants to talk about what is the definition of pedophilia, and that it was a respectful thing that Muhammad waited till this girl was 9. See, he married her at 6, but that's okay because he didn't consummate the marriage at 9. To actually want to defend to actually want to get to this issue about, well, he waited till 9 because it was at 9 where she had her menstrual cycle, and then was according to nature, quote unquote nature, now technically an adult because she was capable now of reproducing this. So that this made it all okay, instead of wondering why this old man would be interested, especially as being a prophet, in a 6-year-old. And what, to me that doesn't add up, but in a sense it does add up, and I'm going to get to that later on in this video, because to me that is quite odd that a 50-something-year-old man would see a 6-year-old. Out of all the other women that were around, I guess they weren't good enough. A 6-year-old. Let me have at this 6-year-old, but then I'll be respectable enough to wait till she's 9. And then you have these very same people who ask for us to give their religions respect and not to question it, but it's these very things that makes these various religions questionable, whether it be Christianity, Judaism, or Islam. It's these very things that are found in each of these books that do bring up the reasons, perfect reasons to question. So anyhow, this guy eventually starts beating around this bush. I mean, bad. I mean, he's running way over here on this mountain, across the way from the burning bush that Moses spoke to, on dealing with this issue. And he wants to get into technicality of the fact that she was, according to nature, an adult at that time, that she was not. So there was really no real problems. And I begin to wonder. Now today, we are smart enough to realize that this 6-year-old would not have the mental capacity of an adult. Or even at 9 years old, did she have mental capacity of an adult? Nor did she have physical features of an adult? And nor did she have, you almost have to wonder, did she even have the real physical ability to reproduce beyond the fact that she did have a menstrual cycle? I don't know about that one. I would have to ask the lady about that. But anyhow, the next point he brings up is the whole matter of that, at different times and days, and even in different countries today, that the age of consent can sometimes be found to be 10, 12, 14, 16, and this was done in the times of Jesus as well as now in different countries and whatnot. And you know what? To me, that's far different. Even with that being the case, that is far different from a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. A 10, 12, 14, especially a 16-year-old, at least has more physical semblance to an adult, at least has developed some. Yes, they've had their menstrual cycle more than likely by that point, and probably are better capable physically of actually having a baby, going through a birth pain like that, and has also developed somewhat of some opinions, not to the capacity of an adult, but at least they have some opinions, at least they have some values, at least they are their own person and whatnot, versus a 6-year-old who has none of these things. A 6-year-old, not even a 9-year-old, is even anywhere close to having the physical similarities of an adult, even the capacity of an adult, mental thinking wise, and I don't even know about the capability to have a baby at that point. It's far different. And you know what I noticed? What I noticed is that there's 4 times that this guy mentions the whole deal with, even below 18, there's, different countries today, and then there's times back in the past, in the ancient times, where there was the age of consent that was different than what we Americans would find as decent. And you know what? I noticed that he never went back to the age of 6 and 9 again. He kept mentioning the age of 10, the age of 12, the age of 14, the age of 16. But those 4 times that he dealt with that, he never once again mentioned the age of 6 or 9. And I find that interesting that he was not willing to mention that age again. Anyhow, beyond that point, I find it interesting because Jesus, somebody that's considered a lesser prophet to folks in Islam, and even somebody like Moses, and other prophets. Anyway, even in the holy text of Christianity and Judaism, you notice that that's odd that they never get caught up with children. Why is it that these holy prophets, or quote unquote holy prophets, by the way, you don't see no stories about them being caught up with children, but Muhammad, who's supposed to be the greatest prophet of all and any prophets, he's taking interest in a 6-year-old having sex with a 9-year-old. That, to me, I'm sorry, brings up immediate question and is very objectionable. And I find it kind of odd that Muslims are willing to defend this action and find it as something normal, something that really has nothing to do with anything. I'm sorry, friend. I just can't accept that. And then he makes this argument. The next argument he makes is that, various people at this time did it. All kind of people at the time of Jesus did it. All kind of people in various countries today do it and have an age of consent that's lower than 18. And so then that makes it okay. Now let me ask this question. Just because a society as a whole decides on something being okay at its time, does that make it okay? Does that excuse it? When we find out later on that it wasn't a rational idea, it wasn't a good idea, it wasn't a righteous act. Let's think about slavery, for instance. Now, just because America thought slavery was fine back then, does that mean it was actually right? Do we actually excuse some of the good people who actually thought slavery was okay? Do we give them a pass and say, well, hey, everybody in society thought it was okay at the time, so it was okay? No. We say, hey, you know what? They were ignorant to something that was actually very wrong. Given that we were more enlightened than they are, and humanity as a whole has evolved on that subject and very many other subjects without the need for religion necessarily, we find it amazing that, hey, now at our times we'll look back and say, slavery was wrong. End of story. There's no getting around that. So those people were ignorant to something wrong. But the big difference is, though, is that none of those people, especially none of these people that are walking around trying to, get married to 12 and 14-year-olds, were prophets. So that's the big difference, you see. They were not prophets with this direct connection to God. And I'm trying to figure out, just because so many people did it, how does that excuse the prophet? How could Allah, in this particular situation, have missed this? Here it is that Muhammad is supposed to be the greatest prophet that ever walked the face of the earth. He's going to be given the eternal light of righteousness that we need to live by, directly from Allah. And Allah's going to let him get caught up in something that's being interested in a 6-year-old, give him no rebuke whatsoever. Go ahead and have that sex with that 9-year-old, get married to a 6-year-old child. Allah's just going to bypass that, even though by today's standard, I would hope no Muslim or anybody else would dare say that it's okay to get married to a 6-year-old and have sex with him at 9. Whether it be by today's standards or even yesterday's standards. You have to admit that even if it was taking place, even though I got to admit, sort of Allah never did say that being married to a 6-year-old was taking place. But even though society said it was okay to be married to 10, 12, 14, 16-year-old women, we still have to say, yeah, very ignorant and very wrong. Versus a 6 and 9-year-old who, like he said, he never mentioned that this was being taking place. But even if it was, we still have to say today, by the standards we know today, that it was sick and wrong. So how does the Prophet Muhammad get off on this one? How do we excuse him for this behavior? Especially being that he was a prophet with a direct connect to the eternal, all-knowing God.